Amazing. Hi, like I said, I'm Evelina. I work at Loveholidays, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we at Loveholidays ensured crisis readiness with the help of Sanity, and how we kind of empowered our non-developers or editors to power the content to both our app and our website. And yeah, I'm going to go through a little bit more what crisis readiness means as well, because I feel like that's a very fluffy word. But I'm going to share that all in a second. Cool. So yeah, just a little bit about what I'll be covering and who I am. So like I said, I'm Evelina. I'm a software engineer. I am actually an ex-molecular biologist. I studied that in university, and then I turned software engineer about 5 years ago now. I did that through kind of an 11-week boot camp in Amsterdam before I moved to London and then started here at Loveholidays. I work both in kind of the pre-booking experience, so the search team, and now I work in the post-booking experience in the manage my booking team, where I work both on our website and our app. I love holidays. For those who don't know, some people might not be from England or from the UK or Germany, where we actually exist as well, in Ireland. But basically, it's an online travel agency that's been around for a bit more than 10 years now. And the vision is to be Europe's #1 holiday provider and kind of open the world to everyone. And in the next slide, I'll briefly talk a little bit about general knowledge about how we use Sanity at Loveholidays. And then I'll go into more details about just the initiative that I led about crisis readiness and how we or how we got help from Sanity, obviously, or how we got Sanity to improve our crisis readiness. So cool. So just a little bit about this. Like I said, basically at Loveholidays, we use Sanity potentially in a bit of unconventional way. But basically on the screen, you see images of our homepage and some of our landing pages, or one of them. And all of these are driven from Sanity in both kind of content and structure. So we both drive pages and we also drive kind of features. And like I said earlier, we're very much about kind of empowering non-engineers and editors to make improvements as part of like a rapid development cycle. So I think it's really cool that we do that, and like it kind of enables us all to do this in a quick and like experiment on these things. I won't talk like a deep dive into our entire tech stack, but I thought it was important to give a little bit of background to everyone, so I can kind of explain how the initiative I led to the results. So our website itself is server-side rendered with client-side navigation and interaction. This means then that obviously the HTML you get when you load a URL is complete for that page and shouldn't change until you actually interact with it. For the JavaScript to server interaction, we use a GraphQL as a backend for front-end layer to both our website and our app. And we're now also in a state where basically we drive almost all of our pages, I think. Well, no, almost all of our pages in a server-driven manner, which basically means that our front-end application doesn't really have a concept of bespoke pages, but rather given like a specific URL, it requests generic page data from our backend for front-end. And then our GraphQL server will then respond with type components, which the front end can then render with the data provided. And like I said, this is just kind of a brief overview of this. But if you're curious, I've linked it at the end of the talk as well. You can Google server-driven UI by Airbnb, and that's kind of where we took inspiration from. Obviously, it's not like the exact copy paste, but that's where the inspiration came from. And I know there's some people on the call that are from our web infrastructure team, and we actually have like a whole team that is like dedicated to Sanity as a tool. And they're definitely the ones that are experts, but I just want to give a shout out to them, because without them, and also without kind of just like the general great documentation that Sanity has, I wouldn't be able to like lead this initiative so easily, because I'm in a team where, you know, we're kind of just using the tool, but I don't own it fully. And I think, yeah, in general, sometimes I find kind of tech documentation can be a bit dry, but I always find Sanity to be very like entertaining almost, and like it's very easy to follow along. So it's been a very smooth journey, I would say. Yeah. So how did we then set out to prepare for like an eventual travel crisis by empowering the editors to configure alerts through Sanity? Well, so what does crisis management actually look like for a travel company, you might ask? When I say crisis, it can be any crisis that can impact a customer traveling. So that can be anything from like a wildfire to earthquakes. And as you'll find out in an example that I have to share later, an accommodation provider of ours actually filed for insolvency. So that was something that was kind of unexpected and that we, well, luckily we're prepared for because we had this initiative in place before that happened. But yeah, just also want to give some more background around kind of what we had before putting this initiative and like getting this initiative in place. So in 2023 alone, there were actually four like major incidents at least that some of like them, I mean, you might have heard of, obviously, like the Icelandic volcano, Morocco earthquakes, wildfires, and all of this. So whilst our customer experience team is like handled this obviously very well, we realized there was very clear gaps in how we prepare and manage these crises. And just I think like it's super important to think about the customer kind of front and center. So if we think about how they were experiencing this, basically if I'm a customer and I go to the manage my booking experience, which is again the post booking experience, you go to your app, you want to check your itinerary, you understand like, am I affected by this change? You might kind of open the chat. You don't actually have an indication if your booking is impacted and you're going to travel in the next coming days. And you're kind of like trying to get an answer. All our systems aren't updated. We don't show anything on the website or on the app or the website part. And then kind of 3 days later, due to how this previously was working without the kind of server-driven UI, you will see a message like an alert in manage my booking. And then by this time, basically you've missed the influx. You can see in this little graph here, you missed the influx, so kind of contacts and messages. And I also think generally when there is a crisis, you want immediate kind of responses. You want to be able to help customers immediately because you want to calm them down and like let them know if there's anything they can do or what we're doing. So I think this is kind of like the background to why we ended up doing this. So yeah, basically pre our summer holiday peaks. So I think this was back in early May. We wanted to make sure we were kind of ready for anything that might happen this year. Obviously, it's impossible to kind of know what will happen, but as we saw last year, we know that like things will happen. It's never like a dull day in travel, like things always happen. And we obviously want to make sure that we're helping our customers. So we put together like a cross-functional group of people from customer service to content and communication. And I think like the key here is like the important part is that the functionality in Sanity is meant to be driven by them and they're supposed to be editing these alerts. So we want to make sure that they're on board early on and defining the MVP, that we're writing like good descriptions in Sanity and all of this. So we kind of set out to define our MVP and that and the three like main things were that non-developers could add this messaging and we just want to make sure that during a crisis when there's an influx of messages that agents can kind of handle the messages that like make good use of their time and basically have also a better like cost-effective way of contacting our customer instead of like sending out SMSs to a lot of people. It's much more better if we can send that out quickly through our app. And app releases shouldn't be a requirement to get these alerts out. And then there should also be kind of guardrails and rules in place. So on the right side here, you'll see that we have kind of a snapshot of what the Manage My Booking homepage generally looks like. So this is kind of where you see your itinerary, you see, when you're going, and you can click on these links to kind of see your flight details, hotel details. And the idea is that when there's an alert, that will kind of push, obviously, the content down, which is good because you want to see the alert kind of center. But we also don't want to overload the customers with a lot of alerts, have several alerts at the same time, or have too much content there because they should still be able to see and view their itinerary easily. So yeah, that was a bit more about the background to the MVP. So how did we get there? Well, obviously with Sanity, that's why I'm here. The main structure, we set out kind of to add a new folder that's called Manage My Booking, the MMB one. And we decided on this that we kind of wanted to make sure that we were having more like MMB specific features. And we thought this was easier to like kind of manage permissions, who has access to these alerts and edit them and add them. And we also had scaling in mind because if you remember, I said that we're kind of on our mission to become Europe's #1 holiday provider, and we're scaling to more countries. So it was important that we had that in mind, that we could support multiple languages. Going into the schema, we decided on having like a booking IDs list. So per booking, you'll have a booking ID. So for those that are affected, we basically get help from my data analyst, or my team itself can also query these in BigQuery, like whoever is based on like certain kind of elements of a booking. And then we decided on just kind of a simple text field for this. I toyed with the idea of just kind of using like a file type instead that people could upload, but then I didn't really know exactly how to do that to prevent kind of faulty files from being uploaded. So we thought like it would maybe be safer just to have like a simple booking IDs list with like text field. We only really had data about one crisis, which affected roughly like 500 customers, but we tested with about 20,000 booking IDs, and all worked fine in the editor. And then next we have kind of like a headline and message. I'll show the alerts kind of in place soon. And the headline and the message of the alert are both utilizing the field level localization. So it's optional to add in translations, but so we have an English website and a German, so it was important that both of those were added in. And then for the message itself, like I actually said earlier, I really like that you can customize these things. So we used block content, but did some customization to it. So basically limited the options to just have a paragraph and a link. Those were the only options you can actually add in. And then I added a character limit as well, because we don't want to overload the customer with too much information. We want to make sure that it's like kind of concise. And then finally, optionally, we also added a button basically at the end that would kind of be like more of a call to action to the customer. If there's anything that we need to kind of get from them, it could kind of link out to a form that we would then gather more information from them so we can help them better. So yeah, how does this all work in practice? So this is my not so great kind of like visualization skills here, I realize, but hopefully I should be able to explain this in a good manner. Basically, when a crisis happens, the idea is that an editor can go to Sanity and add an alert quickly and publish. And then our graphical backend for frontend will query this data and add it to something we call a mandatory resource. That just means that we will fetch these resources, the data like on startup, and then update the data in an interval that we decide on. So for this, we decided on every 10 minutes. Beneficial, especially in a travel crisis, as booking IDs may change from like day to day as new customers kind of are about to leave for holiday and other people are coming back. And the function itself is super simple. It just like check if there's any data available by doing the grok query in Sanity. If there is, we'll do like a simple lookup per booking ID and locale. So obviously it's translated correctly, and then decide whether or not to return this alert component. And thanks to this server-driven UI we've kind of put in place over the last year, we can load this data really quickly to our customers, like within 10 minutes, basically, it's out. And I did say that I also work in the app team, and just want to clarify that because we actually get this live for app users as well in the same time. Thanks to the server-driven UI, and also because we write the same code for app and web, well, basically the same code, we use a framework called Capacitor.js, which is like a framework for embedding a web app into a native app. So that's kind of like really smart because we can kind of keep our team smaller and don't have to write like specific code for app, or some of it needs to be specific, but generally it's not. So yeah, so basically thanks to this structure, we can now get an alert. So like this is kind of like a test alert I did, get that live in 10 minutes, like I said, and it will look something like this. This is obviously just me kind of playing around with it, but this will show to the customer and this will be the first thing they see. And yeah, that's kind of how it was intended to use. In reality, everything, doesn't always happen as we intended to. So I thought it would be cool to kind of share the real life examples. So next up, I'm going to just share a bit more about that. So I think this was, well, in early June, basically one of our accommodation suppliers that are called uTravel, they filed for insolvency, which caused like a lot of distress for our customers that were about to travel, which is totally understandable. They weren't sure if like their hotel actually had been booked on all of this because it's one of our obviously accommodation suppliers. So it kind of prompted us to use this alert earlier on than we imagined, and also in a slightly different way. The customers that were affected were kind of contacted immediately. There was SMSs sent out. It requires, an urgent attention. You want to make sure that it's like very, very urgent and gets them immediately. But over the coming days, as this went live to the public, there were a lot of noise on social media confusing uTravel with us as a company, thinking our company had also gone under. And then our great social team decided to send out some communication to clarify that this was not the case, which was great. But then in turn, that caused a little bit of confusion for the people who were not affected, thinking that they actually were. So we wanted to make sure that we could kind of communicate with them in a more cost-effective manner and not have to send out kind of SMSs to hundreds of thousands of people that weren't affected then, and just give them that clarity and reassurance that everything was fine for them. So what ended up doing, just to kind of a quick fix then and there, is instead of having this kind of red alert critical version, I did like a quick one-line change thanks to our amazing design system that has different variants of this alert. So just edited that to the kind of informative blue manner I'll show in a second. And I think that was kind of a good call, that we kind of were quick to think on our feet, utilize it in a different manner. And then over the course of like the coming days, we actually updated the booking IDs quite a lot. We had to, as you can see here, we actually have two kind of documents created. It's because, yeah, there were actually like hundreds of thousands of people that weren't affected. So we had to divide it into two, which is fair because we weren't really testing earlier with like hundreds of thousands of booking IDs. So we kind of divided it into two, and that worked well in Sanity. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool to see kind of this. If you like look at it from a customer perspective as well, like this went out, we can see here, this is more not have this critical feel and look to it, where it's like red, this is more blue, informative, nothing to panic about. It still works the same, just a one quick change in our back end for front end, so we could get that out quickly. We saw immediate kind of customers on social talking about this, which felt good that people were seeing this and people were aware that they weren't affected. So I think that was a success. Obviously, it's not great that we had to use this alert. If it was up to us, we would never use it actually, but we know that things will happen. So I think it was great that it was in place just in time for this to happen. Yeah, a little bit just what's next for this future, I guess, because I think like in true development fashion, there's always improvements to be made. So I think it's important as we learn to have like guidelines just of how and when to use. Like I said, I kind of did a quick change to change this alert from an informative critical to informative, but the week after I actually did more of like a longer term solution where we have a drop down where you can choose either an informative or a critical. But I think it should just be important to be like, we shouldn't always use informative for everything. It should be maybe kind of an edge case, and we should by default use the critical if and when needed for a few people when there's urgent attention needed, and we want to do that in a very cost-effective manner, and also put it front and center for the customer. And then also a preview would be cool. So I think this is kind of like a custom field that our web infrastructure team has developed, but if you click the preview content, it would be cool if that took the booking ID and kind of logged you into staging, so you could kind of see it in place before you kind of publish it. So you just know what it's going to look like. And then finally, I think the North Star would be, or it would be basically that there's been a lot of manual updating of this booking IDs list. And obviously that's required help from like my teams, engineers, data analysts to actually update this and get that data from BigQuery. But it hasn't really been fully driven by the content editors as we wanted to, which is like fine. Obviously, we're one team that helps each other out, but just in general, I think if we can have one place, or kind of you can configure and edit this based on kind of certain booking elements like destination, airports, and dates, and this will kind of all happen from Sanity, and that will get the data from elsewhere. And so anyone can do this, that would be ideal. And yeah, that was kind of like my talk that I did last time, but I thought it would be a little bit like kind of interesting to share what's happened in the last 2 months since I did that talk. I think that it's actually kind of like spot on 2 months ago. I did the talk in June. And just to kind of showcase how much we use Sanity at Loveholidays, we use it both for, you know, simple features to actual like drive pages. And just want to share a little bit more about that before we wrap up. So the first thing is that we have custom check-in instructions. This is something that's been there a while, but a couple of weeks back, we have a specific supplier that basically requires customers to check in a different way. So what we did is that we extended the functionality to kind of be able to choose from like a supplier name or a supplier code, and then you could add custom check-in instructions. We were seeing that approximately 15 to 20% of our contacts in our German office were due to this matter. So it was kind of like a huge, I think that kind of is like 1 day's work for an agent. And in the first 10 days this was live, we actually saw that check-in related chats for Germany specifically, because it was only live there, had decreased by 18%, while some other suppliers that didn't have this increased instead. So I think that's pretty cool. And then finally, this week, actually right now, I'm leading an initiative that aims to drive informational entry pages to all the amendment flows we have. So basically, when you manage your booking, you might want to add a passenger, you might want to change, you might want to remove a passenger, and all of these kind of flows are available to you. We did an early test. This is early test with the add passenger flow, because we realized we weren't doing a really good job in explaining what the process was to these customers, causing a lot of extra requests that actually didn't result in the customer fulfilling the request later on. And we thought, as a hypothesis, by surfacing more information earlier on, that we would receive less contacts and less requests because people are more informed. And since we went live with that, which is not a Sanity-driven page, I'll get to that, there's been a reduction on these requests by 9%. And after this initial success, we wanted to see if we can continue that with our other pages. So right now, I'm actually adding all of these pages for all of these flows in Sanity, where we want to experiment with the content as well. And we want to do that to make help our customers make informed decisions, obviously, but also we want to make sure that our agents can spend time helping customers that have a higher intention to actually make that change to their booking. So yeah, all of this is basically to empower, you know, non-developers to edit, to experiment, and do that all from Sanity. So yeah, that's been really cool. I'm really happy that I get to work on more on Sanity feature, because I think it's really fun. So yeah, thank you so much. That was it for me. This is a little reference to the Medium blog post about Airbnb. Thank you.